Good afternoon, YouTube. So, what is it? Today we're going to be doing motor mounts on this 07 Monte Carlo with the 5.3 V8. This tutorial or these procedures will follow through for all Monte Carlo SS, Impala SS, Grand Prix GXP, and Buick Lacrosse Super. This can also follow for some of the other wide body cars, but this is primarily for the LS4. So let's get to it. So as we can see, this motor is collapsed. The motor mounts back here are collapsed. This one is shot, very loose. The one down here in the middle has to be replaced. The one over there has to be replaced. But definitely this one over here because the motor is leaned that way a little bit. So we're gonna start with replacing this right here. All you need to do this is two 15mm sockets and ratchets and possibly a jack, and I'll show you why. So I have my 15mm on this side. I'm gonna use this as leverage right here because I can't use the phone and camera at the same time, and I have the 15mm here on this side. So just loosen that. So after you get that nutter loose, this here just comes out, and then you want to do the same thing for this one here and there. So after taking off the bolt and nut here and here, all you do for this is you just pick it up and take it out, and then you reverse the steps for putting a new one in. So after I grab that, I'll show you how to put it in. So to put this back on, here's the new one. We just basically put it in where it goes. This side right here with the hump is the top part. Keep that in mind. I'm not sure that it really matters too much, but I want to do it right. So do that, and then you just put this here. That goes through like that. You just hand thread this nut on here. And then do the same for this here, the bottom one. This is why I say you may need a jack, because this mount down here is collapsed. The motor will lean forward and make it hard to put this back, but we're fine today. What up, OJ? And then in order to tighten this, we just reverse the ratchets and do the same thing we did. Put the nut back on. Nice and tight and good to go. One down, 1, 2, 3 to go. All right, so in order to do this next part, or this next motor mount for the passenger side, we're gonna need a jack and jack, or you can also get away with using 2 jacks. So I'm gonna start with jacking the car up and taking this wheel off, and after I do that, I'll show you the next step. All right, so I have the car jacked up off the ground right now. I have the tire taken off. I did put a jack stand in place. Normally I would put it under this part of the car where the pinch point is, but because of how rusty this car is, I decided to use the cradle to support it. You can also choose to do 2 if it makes you feel safer, but I'm pretty sure 1 jack stand is fine. So what's gonna happen here is, this right here is the motor mount or transmission mount. It is bolted to this little C bracket here, and then that C bracket is bolted to the transmission. And then that together is bolted to the subframe right here. So what we're gonna do is unbolt it from the subframe and then use the motor, or I'm sorry, use the jack to push the motor up and lift it out of the subframe. So let me grab some tools and I'll show you what I mean by that. 15mm socket and ratchet, or impact wrench of some sort, and maybe some extensions too. That's it. So the first two bolts you want to unbolt are right here. This and this. These are both 15mm nuts. Just want to get that up in there. Take that off. Take that off. So now that that is disconnected, once we raise the motor up, these little threads here will lift out of the subframe. So here I am at the front of the car. I have the jack ready here to support the motor. I'm gonna put this right in the middle of the oil pan. I would suggest you to put a wooden block or something up under it to support it. I'm not going to, because this jack will get the job done for me, because I have a flat surface jack. But if you have one of those with like teeth and stuff, I would definitely recommend something with a flat surface so that you don't puncture or damage your oil pan. So I'm gonna go ahead and support that. And then when we lift it up, you'll see those little prongs right there, or not prongs, sorry, the threads right there lift out of the subframe. So let's see if I can get that. So as you can see, this part here just lifted out of the subframe. So the next thing we're gonna do is take this, that, and this bolt off right here. Those are all 15mm. My hands just got cold as hell. Facts. Tell me, I got the phone right there. Dickhead. After I seen this shit, man. Alright, so it was an absolute bitch to get all three of those nuts loose, but I'm gonna take them out all the way now with this ratchet I have here. I'm sorry. That's how. That's out. And then this bottom one here. Now that all three of those bolts are out, we should be able to just pick this up and wiggle it out of right here. Let's see. I have to wiggle it out of the cars. Nasty oil leak down here, so that makes it no better. All right, so finally managed to wiggle it out of here. I did get it out right here, so it is possible to get it out through the, like next to the CV axle. So next thing you have to do is unbolt this C bracket from the actual motor mount itself. There's a bolt here on this side, and there's another one here on this side right here. I think these are both also 15mm. Let me check. Yep, 15mm. So I'm gonna use the impact gun to get it off because it's a lot easier rather than holding. If you are holding it using a ratchet, you probably will have to hold it a little tight, but not anything that you can't do because I've done this before, so you can do it. And I'm also gonna clean this up with a little bit of brake clean. All right, so I have the 15mm and ratchet. Let me just take these off here. That's one. And then for the other side, that's two. Now we do want to keep in mind that the side that this bracket will go on is the side where these threads are diagonal from each other, as opposed to the other side where they're lined up together. So with our new motor mount, we want to make sure it's oriented right. But of course, you wouldn't even be able to put it on the other side, so it's kind of a common sense thing there. But I'll get the new motor mount and I'll get it mounted up and then show you how to put it back in the car. The C bracket mounted up with the new motor mount here. You can definitely see the difference in size as far as the two motor mounts, because this one is old and worn out and collapsed. So it's definitely something you want to replace if it goes bad in your car, because it can cause wear and tear on your transmission and the motor itself, I believe, too. So definitely take care of that if you have that problem. So to get it back in the car, I think you can just go like this way. Try it. Wiggle it on in there. Power steering lines in the way, of course. All right, so I was finally able to wiggle it on back in there. The two bolts, or the two threads that go to the bottom part that connect to the subframe, I have them sitting in the hole already. That's me pushing up on it. I had to lift the motor up or jack it up a little more in order to get it back in there. So the next thing we want to do is lower the motor slowly. You have to walk back and forth to do this. And you're gonna lower it until these holes here match up where they should be. Because obviously the motor's jacked up right now, so that's why, you know, it's not where it should be. Another thing we want to do is the two nuts that were down here. We want to just hand thread those back in a little so that they don't lose their place under the car. So I'm actually gonna do that now. All right, so now that those are hand threaded back in, they won't lose their place there. And actually, I just looked, if I rock this forward a little bit, I'm able to actually line that hole up. So what I want to do is basically rock it forward a little and get that one in its hole, so that when it falls down into place, the other two fall into where they should be. So hand thread that, and then thread it in a little bit after having to raise and lower the motor just a little bit to get it where it should be. Now this last one here has to be put in. Now if you see that line there where basically this would have been, so I think we probably have to lift it up a little bit, but that's all I was doing, just playing around with the motor up and down until you can line the holes up. And then after you have all three threaded in, then you can tighten them all down. All right, so after playing around with the engine and tranny, raising and lowering, finally got all three lined up, threaded in and tightened. Now, last thing to do is just to tighten these bolts up under here. Now, because we were smart and threaded them in already, we don't have to worry about aligning them with the subframe. Just go ahead and tighten those up, and after that, we'll be done. I have all three of the bolts for the C bracket threaded in and tightened down after playing with the engine and tranny, raising and lowering. Now that we have that done, these are already in their place down here, so we can go ahead and lower our jack. I did that already to release any tension, or whatever word I'm trying to use. But basically, so that this motor mount here is sitting all the way in the subframe. And the last thing we need to do is just tighten those nuts there. And then after that, you're good to go. All right, YouTube, the next motor mount we are going to change. You actually can't see it from here. It is all the way down here. It's like right in the middle. It's not hard to do. I would say it's probably the most difficult of the four to do, but overall it's not hard at all. It's the same process as raising and lowering the motor and subframe and stuff like that, but I'll go get jacks and some tools and stuff and show you how to get it done. So the first thing we want to do is jack the car up on both sides right about here and then put jack stands here. So after I get that done, I'll come back and show you what's next. Car jacked off the ground, have jack stands on both sides right about at this point to hold the car evenly on both sides. First thing we want to do is disconnect our dog bone motor mount. We don't have to disconnect it from both sides, we just want to disconnect it from right here. That being because once we get the raising the motor up, it's going to push that way and up, and of course this doesn't get longer, so it'll put stress on this bushing right here. So that's why we just want to disconnect the one side. So we're going to do the same thing we did earlier to replace it. Both 15 millimeter bolts on each side and unloosen it. So the issue I ran into that I referred to earlier, as far as having to use a jack in order to get this bolt out. Now, being that this motor mount here in the front is collapsed, is pressing forward, so it's making it difficult for us to get this bolt out, because it should just slide right out. But because that one is collapsed down there and it's pushing it forward, it puts a lot of tension on it. So we're gonna raise the motor up a little bit by the oil pan, and it's gonna push this back and make it easy for us to get this out. As I raise the motor up, it's gonna loosen the tension. Now this is straight, and it's just going to come right out. Simple as that. So we could actually leave the jack on the motor because we're going to need to jack it up anyways. The next thing we want to do is remove the two 15 millimeter bolts under here. There's supposed to be one here and one here, but this one is missing for whatever reason, so I just have one here to do. Okay, now that I've taken that bolt out, we want to take these bolts out up here that basically connect to the motor mount. They are right there, and there's a third one right there at the bottom. It's kind of blurry, can't really focus on it, but what's gonna make it easier to get to these 15 millimeter bolts is raising the motor up. So I have the jack on the oil pan already. Again, it is good to put a wooden block or something on here so that you don't damage the oil pan or puncture it at all. But yeah, so let's raise the motor up and then try and get those 15 millimeter bolts out. My 15 millimeter swivel and a bunch of extensions right here, and I'm gonna try and get these bolts out. Let's see. That's one bolt right here. All right, so I got the 3 bolts out there. Now the next thing we have to do is just wiggle this thing on out of the car. And I feel like this is gonna be super easy. This is in the way. You can just push this up and then wiggle it on out of there. Maybe rotate it. All right, so I just got the motor mount out of the car. This thing is definitely shot. Just like basically it was sitting on the actual mount itself, or what the bracket that connects it to the car. So in order to get these off, again, there are 2 15 millimeter bolts. Again, probably not going to be able to hold the phone and take it off at the same time, so I'll just come back when I have it off. Okay, so I was able to get these nuts off here, one there and one there, with this 15 millimeter ratcheting wrench, because this space here basically doesn't allow you to get a socket and ratchet in there. But they just come off like that, and then the bracket just disconnects like that. And then now you can go ahead and put the new one in. Now, if you notice, it's crooked that way, so we want to make sure we put it the same way that it was before, which is just like this. because in the car it sits that way. So I'm gonna bring this over. Stick that in those holes. Put that back on there. And tighten them down. Another thing I want to note here, this doesn't look like it's supposed to be like this. One side, basically, you can make it go back and forth. Now, seeing that there are like threads in there on this side, it seems like from, you know, the torque of the car and it being damaged so long, it basically forces itself like that. So I believe it goes in this position and not this position. But if you have that situation, it means you definitely took too long to replace your motor mounts. But back to getting this car back together. All right, so now that I have this motor mount and bracket put back together, we could go ahead and now maneuver it back into the car and yeah, get it mounted back up, and let's see how hard the time is. All right, so I was finally able to maneuver it and get it back in the car. Now we want to line that bracket up with the motor and start to thread in the 3 bolts. Not fully, but just enough to line it up and get it to where it should be. All right, so we got all 3 of the bolts back up and they're not tightened down, they're just threaded in a little bit. Now the next thing you want to do, if you haven't done it already while adjusting, is to go ahead and lower the jack a little so that the threads for the bottom of the motor mount fall into the subframe. And then, like before, we want to put the nut on there just a little bit so that it can't, you know, fall out of its place. So I'm gonna put the nut on, or in your case, you're gonna put 2 nuts on, and then I'll show you what's next. All right, so now that I have my nut hand threaded on there, or not hand threaded, but you know, with a socket, I threaded it in there. Now we want to go ahead and tighten all 3 of these motor mount bracket bolts. Again, those are 15 millimeters. And then once we tighten the 3 of them, we'll be able to lower this all the way into the subframe. All right, now that I have all 3 of the bolts up here tightened and in their place, I can go ahead and lower this jack that we have holding the motor up. We can lower it all the way, and then we can finally tighten these 2 bolts here. And then after that, we have one more step that we have to do. All right, now that we've lowered our motor all the way, we can go ahead and finish tightening up this bolt. And then after we do that, the only thing we have left to do is put this back together here. Now this should line up almost perfectly, which mine just about does, so I should be able to get this bolt in with no problem. Let's see. Yep, so now that we have a good motor mount at the bottom and this is lined up perfectly, this goes right in with no problem, just like that. You see, there's nothing holding up the motor anymore, meaning that motor mount down there was definitely the problem, and that's why it was difficult for us to get this bolt out in the first place without using the jack. And after if you've tightened this 15 millimeter bolt, you are done with the job. Thanks for watching.